Hello everybody, and welcome back. Good to talk to all of you again today, and I do apologize for my recent absence. There's been some real life stuff that I've had to take care of, so haven't really been around to make any videos, but I have kind of kept up with, I think, things that have been going on. And the main topic of discussion today really has to do with carriers, because, there's been pretty, I guess, comprehensive, maybe just large discussion overall recently about CVs, about ideas to fix carriers, about, all these things. And yet at times I feel like the discussion, while having good ideas, kind of misses what's the big issue right now with carriers as a whole. And by the way, no matter how you kind of want to go about fixing carriers, you're going to piss somebody off. I don't think there's a way to fix carriers without pissing somebody off. Now, for those of you who are watching the actual background battle and going, wait a minute, you're not actually playing a carrier. No, I'm not. These just happen to be two of the nice battles I had today. One of them in the Roma, one of them in the Khabarovsk. Khabarovsk battle was actually kind of a fun one. Just totally went out there and just for the fun of it, we played triple Khabarovsk division. So yeah, you should read the chat on that one. It's kind of entertaining. Okay, on to the main topic today, carriers. So if you look at carriers today, you might think that, hey, if we did this or this or this, we might be able to make things better. So for example, I've seen people suggest things like, hey, maybe we should take the strafe out. Maybe we'll make it more welcoming for people to play the game. I've seen sort of other suggestions and heard other suggestions about maybe we'll put in fuel limits, maybe we will make carriers more damage over time, like etc, etc, etc. Lots of pretty reasonable suggestions, by the way. I've actually, at times, I believe, advocated for some of those myself. However, what happens if the changes you're advocating for, right, like those kinds of changes, to fix something, but yet the thing that you're trying to fix is fundamentally in itself broken? And that's pretty much the big issue that we have right now with carriers, right? As a whole individual class, as the way the class interacts with other ships, classes, etc., and how other ships interact with carriers, the whole thing top to bottom is a broken system. So essentially, the box, if we can sort of imagine carriers and their gameplay and all that as being sort of its box, the box itself is broken. So any real sort of suggestions to fix things, as long as it's within the confines of the box, still makes it broken. It's not really going to get fixed. And so here's where it gets really, really challenging. And here's why I said earlier, I don't think anybody's ever really going to be fully happy. Okay, maybe some people will be, but other people won't be, right? So let's take a look at carriers as they exist in World of Warships today. And what makes it bad? Or like, what makes carriers not a fun thing to play right now? And I want you to think about this, right? So sit there, think about carriers and go, what do I really not like about the way CVs are? So you're probably going to say, hey, CB gameplay is essentially an RTS game. That's what you're playing. You're playing like a real-time strategy game. You got to have good micromanagement. You got to have good sort of map awareness, situational awareness, all these things. And to be truly good at that, you're going to end up being a very, very small select percentage of players. And then when, sort of someone who's not great at that tries to play the game and they run into these great players, they get stomped and very quickly you stop playing the game, right? You don't want to play this anymore. That's maybe one issue. Other issues to think about, all right? Maybe some people say, hey, you know what? The whole idea of playing against an RNG mechanic, AA, in terms of sort of fighter engagements and everything, that's not fun, right? Because if I go into a fight and it's basically RNG dictating who wins and who loses, or how many planes I lose to a ship's AA, that's not really fun. I have to do all this work, and there I am running into some sort of one button press mechanic, and that's it, and that's not fun. So maybe that's an issue. Some people might point out that carriers have skills that just are so vastly different than every other class. I mean, you can play a destroyer, move on to play cruiser, or move on to play battleship, and control schemes and everything is pretty similar, and some of the skills are definitely transferable. Well, with carriers, it's like, whoa, there's a whole new interaction with controls. And let's move on a little bit. Think about, let's say, player numbers for carriers. Pretty low, right? The player numbers for carriers not that high. These days, you typically get pretty good to really good, like amazing CV players, or you just get potatoes. And that in itself creates problems for gameplay, because if you happen to be playing, let's say, a random battle and the enemy team gets like the super unicum CV and you've got the potato, your game's gonna become a lot harder. Chances of you winning quite a bit lower, just because of that one ship's sort of massive skill gap difference, right? For those of you who play destroyers, you also do have a sense of how annoying CVs can be as well for your lives, right? I mean, you especially think about, let's say, IGN destroyers. Right? You have torpedoes being your main armament, for example, and oh look, there's a carrier. Now, most of your torpedo strikes might just go nowhere. CV might just be spotting you most of the game and just driving you up a wall. So many, 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 many problems. And that's what I was trying to get at, is that the fundamental box, which is what CV play is broken, right? So if you're trying to, let's say, fix it, it's going to be kind of hard to fix by implementing certain small things within the current structure of CV play. It's just, it doesn't work. And I think this is kind of what happened last year. 2017, I think Wargaming initially had the idea, hey, look, we'll do something to carriers, we'll make it better. And then they sat down, and I think they started talking about carriers, and they started to realize, oh man, something is definitely not going to be right here. And I think that's kind of where the problem, sort of went, where they started to look at the carrier, and they realized that the box that is carrier gameplay right now is so flawed and so broken that there was no easy fixes anymore. Right? And I do believe they came out later so in the year, in like sort of 2017, and they kind of said, yeah, the whole carrier thing, it's probably not going to be done this year, because hey, if we're going to have to fix this, we got to fix all these other things as well. So now you're starting to look at it and going, yeah, if there's this huge fundamental thing that's broken and is just completely broken, any fixes you apply to that thing that's broken isn't really going to fix anything, because all you're doing is band-aiding, right? You're applying a band-aid solution to say, hey, is it going to work potentially better? And maybe in one case might, but maybe it won't solve some of the other issues, right? So for example, and this is going back to some of these earlier suggestions, so let's say you implement fuel limits, right? Let's say you implement fuel limits on aircraft. They're only able to go so far. They're only going to be able to carry out their tasks for so long before they've got to come back to the carrier. Okay, so what does this fix? This fixes, for example, that perma-spotting of destroyers. And destroyer players might be like, fantastic, that solves this problem, and maybe now it's going to be a lot less prevalent. Okay, but now on the flip side, think about the additional amount of management that the carrier player now needs to do. All of a sudden, it's even more stuff for a carrier player to manage. So imagine you're not the super unicum level CV player, and you're just the average guy who likes carriers and you kind of want to play them. This is not going to help you, right? Carriers are going to remain as inaccessible as ever. And then this also doesn't solve the issues, for example, like, hey, you have this massive skill disparity in your game with carriers, and the team with a better carrier just has a much higher chance of winning, just because your team CV doesn't know what the heck they're doing. And you kind of see how like one thing solves something, but other things don't get solved. Because like I said, it is a band-aid, right? You apply band-aid and it fixes like one thing, but it doesn't fix the overall problem, right? All right, so now that you've kind of maybe see this issue, go back and put yourself into the shoes of a developer. How would you fix the problem, right? Let's say that was a task that was handed to you, and you're now tasked with figuring out some kind of solution. Well, I've already sort of explained that if you keep it to the current system, which is this overhead RTS gameplay that we've got for carriers right now, dealing with AA being sort of this RNG role, etc., and you say, okay, let's do a couple of small fixes, a couple of band-aid fixes, let's add this thing, for example, like I mentioned earlier, the fuel limit or whatever. Okay, you might fix some problems, but there's a high chance that the current persisting problems don't really get solved, right? People who didn't want to play that mode still not going to play it. The population's still not likely to be super high. So, reading forums, reading Reddit, sometimes I see people say, well, you know what? Why doesn't World of Warships just adopt Battle Stations Midway / Battle Stations Pacific carrier gameplay? Right? Now, for those of you who don't remember what that looks like, or don't remember the game, or whatnot, or never played it, so Battle Stations Midway and Pacific, the carrier is, well, it's basically you launch aircraft, and then basically your job is to play as the pilots to attack various objectives and targets, including naval ships. Alright, so that's maybe not a bad idea. Maybe that's what wargaming should do with World of Warships, is to go ahead and grab a Battle Stations Midway-esque system, right? Where now, instead of that manual drop or the strafe or whatever, now you've actually got to control your individual squadrons. And that will solve some issues, for sure. For example, you might be able to solve the accessibility issue, right? Players, they might find that particular kind of system more in line with, let's say, the skills required to play other classes. So there's some sort of familiarity going into carriers. So more people are likely to try it. Maybe the player population increases. Well, as the player population increases, there's going to be less of people constantly running into the Unicum division versus the potato, right? Just because there's going to be more people, and there's the larger the population, the more sort of picks you get of which players end up on your side versus the other, and maybe you're able to solve that particular issue. Also, if you think about it, if you go with the battle stations system for carriers, well, there's probably going to be fewer squadrons, right? Because it's not an RTS anymore. You've actually got to fly these squadrons, and you got to put the effort into that. Okay, so hey, you're not going to be able to do this crazy micromanagement thing that you can do right now. Alright, so fewer squadrons. And if you have fewer squadrons, maybe you've got the ability now to, let's say, minimize that effect of perma-spotting, right? Maybe the carrier's role can change a little bit from the glorified scout in competitive to maybe just in random, I'm going to come in, alpha nuke your ship and just eliminate you out of the game in the first like 3 minutes, and then you have no fun, etc. So maybe you go from something like that to a little bit more restrictive, right? You're not able to provide that kind of crazy scouting. You're able still to attack, but maybe not to such intensity as maybe exists in the game right now. So, alright, so maybe that kind of system works. But then think about the system in more depth, and you realize that, wait a minute, this is not so easy to do. Because it's not just, hey, let's implement this particular system. Think about, for example, how do you interact with the surface ship? Imagine you're the CV player now and you're playing this battle station-esque system. How much fun would it be for you to have spent all that effort flying your aircraft and getting into the right positions, and then all of a sudden realize, wait a minute, hold on a second, all the A that I'm facing is completely automated, and it's another sort of flip of a coin RNG system. You're probably not going to be too happy with that. So in order to fix that, maybe you've got to have a brand new AA system come in. And if you redo AA, think about how the game would have to all of a sudden change in that regard as well. Would we all of a sudden have to see manual control of AA guns instead? I mean, that's not, I think, outside the realm of possibility. I mean, for those of you who've looked at World of Warships Blitz, for example, Blitz, you have control of your secondary armament. So, I mean, is it really a huge stretch of the imagination to say, hey, that might apply to AA as well? But in the event that happens, I mean, think about your gameplay. It really is going to change a little bit, right? Because you can no longer just control click a squadron and then maneuver your ship. Now you've actually got to take time away from your main guns, go to your AA guns to direct them. So at that period of time, what did your main guns do? Is that going to be another whole system where it's going to be like an automated system that is going to automatically shoot a target you designate? But you see how that can lead to issues too, because now a battleship player could hit other people with guns that they didn't even have to aim. So that's not really something you want, right? Because imagine a battleship goes around and starts working on their AA. Well, they priority designate a target for their main guns, and the AI shoots you and scores a citadel because the AI might just be a better aiming thing than the human player. Well, that's not really much fun now, is it? And you sort of begin to see why it is such a big problem, because it's like you want to fix a whole series of issues with carriers, fine, but how does it affect everything else? And do you now have to fix everything else as well in order just to get carriers to work? And if that is necessary, I'm not really sure how they're going to get around to fixing all this, right? Because it then becomes a really sort of big, complicated problem instead of something that is a simple problem, which I think is what they initially thought about in 2017. They thought, hey, we can just use the current system and make X and Y changes. And then they look at it in more detail and going, oh, wait a minute, hold on, that's not the case, because it's not going to be enough. Going back a little bit more, and let's say you think about concealment. What about the concealment system? The concealment system was initially designed with an idea of how it would interact with sort of the RTS CV play. Well, if you bring about a brand new system, does that maybe have to change, right? What about CV secondaries? Are you going to have to give them manual control of their secondaries? Because what if a DD now sneaks by and, attacks a carrier? Are you still going to be depending on automatic weapons, or are you now going to have to depend on, the sort of manually controlled weapons? What about how do planes interact with other planes? So how does your aircraft from your CV interact with enemy aircraft, right? What is the torpedo bomber to fighter interaction? What is the dive bomber to fighter interaction? What about torpedo bomber and dive bombers? Did they have an interaction? And all of a sudden you have this huge amount of questions that you've got to sort of find solutions for. Like all these things that you've got to now figure out. And all the time that you're doing this, think about what the sort of player reception is going to be, right? Like I think I might have mentioned this earlier, or maybe I forgot. I did. I can't remember. It's been a bit of a long day. But think about what the current crop of super Unicum, really good CV players, like how are they going to respond to a change like this? Essentially that would be like a whole change to their whole class, and would making them angry, alienating them, would that be the direction you want to go for a chance to maybe fix a class for the larger majority of players out there? No exact science to this, right? And then furthermore, on top of that, what about people who have bought premium ships? What happens then? What happened to all the people who've ever bought Saipans? What about all the people who've ever bought those Christmas crates and maybe have gotten Saipans or whatnot out of them? You're starting to sort of get a bigger and bigger and bigger sort of set of questions and problems and all that you've got to fix just so you can fix that flawed box. And it's not easy. There's no real easy way to do this, right? And also then how do you differentiate different carriers, different nations' carriers? Are the differences all going to be in planes? Is it going to be in other things? And we can go on and on and on. Right? And this is simply saying, hey, let's adopt a battle station styled system. And mind you, I mean, there's still other aspects to this as well. I mean, what about like damage done by torpedoes? What about the flooding mechanics in the game? What about let's say damage over time, like let's say fires and dive bombers? Does that change? What about different bomb loadouts for different planes? Is that going to be something you have to now set? And you can kind of go on and on and on for a while, and you start to realize that it's like you want to change one thing and you want to rework one thing. There's a lot of other things in the game that you've got to work on, because one change affects sort of everything else as well, right? And like I said, this is my guess as to I think what was happening when initially we got that whole 2017 year of the carrier thing, and then it didn't actually happen. Is I think this is the realization that they had when they sat down and started talking about it and going, oh, wait a minute, this is harder. and I was just simply taking sort of an off the box solution by saying, hey, let's import a battle stations clone, which I doubt Wargaming will do, because this is obviously their game, and they kind of want their own thing going for it, and their own flavor and things like that, right? So yeah, and like I said earlier, right? No matter what change happens, I don't think everybody's gonna be made happy. What the current crop of Unicums might see as the way to fix the carriers might not really resolve the issues that are a priority for Wargaming as a company, and might not be something that, let's say, the average Joe wants. What the average Joe wants is something that the Unicums of today can't accept or can't stand. And that's just kind of the reality of it. So, whatever the rework eventually becomes, I'm definitely interested in seeing what they come up with. Although for those of you who definitely have, like, maybe ideas, or maybe something that you can come up with to, let's say, address the major issues with the current way carriers are, make sure to leave those ideas in the comment section below. I know it might sound like, hey, nobody ever sees this, but I know that the community people in Wargaming, even if I'm not a CC, I know they still come to videos and they still read comments. It's part of their job, and I think this is something that they do. So don't be afraid to leave your thoughts and your ideas in the comment section below. And if there's something that's especially interesting, I'll pass it up to some of the devs and say, hey, what do you think about this, right? So, let me know what you think, because who knows, maybe one of you out there has an idea that nobody else has really thought of, and that might just be the solution to the problem. Anyways, a few remaining small things to talk about, because the big kind of topic is done, and it is something that hopefully will spark some debate, discussion, whatnot, because it is a challenging problem to deal with, to say the least. Anyways, so covering a few of the other small things. One, these two battles, especially the first one, that was actually a pretty good battle. That's the best one I've had so far with the Roma. And as much as her guns still drive me crazy and they're inconsistent and whatnot, I mean, I still have fun playing the ship. Although if anybody was to ask me, like, should I actually go spend the money to buy the ship? I mean, I would pretty much say, unless you're like a collector or just you really like the ship historically, otherwise I would really pass. I really don't see Roma as being, I don't really see her as being sort of that extremely competitive tier 8 ship, but she is good fun at times, and I think that's fair. And the other thing, of course, is this particular battle with the Cobb. So the reason I was doing this Cobb game earlier, and by the way, there's something that's actually really silly about it, is I was working on one of those like campaign missions that needed you to do 100,000 damage in a destroyer on battleships. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go take this Khabarovsk. I'm gonna go farm the damage. Hence why I was like super aggressive, charged down there and like was smacking those BBs around trying to get that damage. And I think I did reasonably well. I mean, we managed to completely take care of that side. And then I started hunting some destroyers as I was basically plotting a course to get myself over to the last remaining battleship, the North Carolina. I mean, I was already over like 100,000 damage, and I'm like, okay, I did a little bit of damage to the Hindi earlier, I did a little bit of damage to Shima, so I'm probably a little bit shy of that 100,000 mark. So I really got to get over there and maybe ping that North Carolina a little bit and get some more damage that way, and hopefully all will be good. So I'm basically doing this like, and by the way, to the person who asked that, yes, this actually did make it into a video, although not like an actual special feature. This just happened to be part of the discussion of background kind of thing. But again, I thought the battle was kind of a cool one nonetheless. Anyway, so now I am chasing down the enemy destroyer that I know is at B. Not like super worried about these enemy destroyers. One, because the only one that can potentially hit me with a torpedo is the gearing. The other two Pan-Asian destroyers, they can actually hit me. Haha. Deep water torpedoes are fun against battleships, but they don't really do much against DDs. And I also know that the gearing was pretty far away. So, no, I basically didn't care. I was chasing down these Pan-Asian destroyers because I'm going to go get you. And there was one that was hiding at B. Now, obviously in the process of capping it, and I'm trying to get on to the cap as well. And as soon as the Pan-Asian destroyer steps off, I'm going to get on there and then chase him down and well, before I do that, I've got to get a little bit of damage on that NC. Again, trying to get close to that 100,000 damage on battleships. And there it is. There's the NC. It's still pretty healthy, so yay, that's good. That's good. Should be able to get there. I mean, Cobb is pretty fast. I'm still on Spood Beast right now. So I'm going to get over there and plink some shells into that NC and get some additional damage. As I come around the island here, there is the Pan-Asian Destroyer. So of course that takes priority. Open up on that Pan-Asian Destroyer first. First shot was pretty awful. But I do manage to start landing pretty decent hits there. There we go. Additional salvo. Pan-Asian Destroyer is like, nope, I don't want to be facing off a Cobb. Nope, 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 get me out of here. So, pop smoke, disengages. Alright, so the NC, well, not so healthy anymore. But I'm like, alright, it's got 20,000 HP left. You know, if I just get a couple thousand, I should be good, I think. So, definitely get my guns, get into position, start aiming, and, okay, never mind. NC barely survived. A couple thousand HP left. By the time I got all my guns around and trying to slow my ship down, oh, that island blocked me. So, a little bit of damage here and there, a little bit of damage here and there. I just can't get the shells over, and I think the NC's about to get blapped there. Yep, it blapped by the Iowa with whatever remaining HP it had. Okay, so, hoping I have 100,000 damage, by the way. Hoping I have 100,000 damage, and I'm done that mission. And I get my 3 stars, right? I resume my hunt for the 2 remaining enemy ships. One of them being this destroyer here, this Pan-Asian one here. I'm no good at pronouncing the Pan-Asian destroyer names, by the way. Just not really that great at it. But I think this is the Shenyang, I think, that's over here. I think, because the Yueyang, I think, is somewhere else. Yeah, there it is. Comes up, I engage him right away, and not worried about torpedoes. There he goes. Take him down. Alright, so, with that done, there is an enemy destroyer capping A, so turn around, gonna go into pursuit mode. And to sort of speed things up, because, you know, kind of should speed it up, you should see what happens near the end. It's actually quite amusing. So, speeding up this little clip because nobody really wants to watch me sail nicely across the ocean at maximum Khabarovsk speed, which with speed boost on is kind of a ludicrous like 48 point something knots. I'm just zooming across as quickly as I can. Alright, the Yueyang pops up. I see him. You know, he's kind of a little far, so, you know, take a couple pot shots at range. I think I do land like a couple of shells in there, nothing significant. But, anyways, the Yueyang pop smoke disengages. So, I come out from the island, I get the detected icon, I'm like, alright, there's no way this Yueyang has gone south. It has to have gone north, has to have gone towards that island over there at D2. Only logical place where he can be spotting me, right? And then, of course, I fall off of detect, which means he's behind the island. So I, in chat, in all chat, I kind of make the mention that I know you're behind that island, I'm gonna come and get you. You just see the reaction of the enemy team is actually kind of amusing. So I'm like, you're behind this island, aren't you? I'm coming for you. And you know, I was initially hoping he would just come out and engage me to the death or something like that, and then somebody else on the enemy team eventually says rush the Atago instead. Which the Yueyang actually has gone south and is actually right in front of the Atago. And of course, at that kind of range, it is game over very, very quickly, as there's the salvo, blap, dead. So anyways, there is the final result screen from that Khabarovsk battle. Kind of just like a random battle that was done for fun, you know, with 3 Khabs, just full-on lull division. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, that's all there is really to talk about today. Let me know, of course, what you guys think about the carriers thing. You know, if you have any ideas, just make sure you leave those in the comment section below. Aside from all that, folks, take care. Have yourselves a very, very good one. And I will, of course, talk to all of you again really, really soon.